The jewel in the crown, the grandest Grand Prix of them all. There is no challenge as great, no victory as sweet. There is, quite simply, no race quite like the Monaco Grand Prix. Well, welcome, folks, to this very special Monaco Grand Prix preview. It is a Grand Prix Sunday, but we are not at the Grand Prix we would have wished to have been. I welcome in Jolyon Palmer, Lawrence Barretto to this show. But guys, we wish we were in Imola right now, but the circumstances, the situation out in the region, just an impossible one for us.
Yeah, really difficult times for those people in Italy and in that region. They had 6 months of rainfall in 1.5 days, and that's obviously caused quite dramatic devastation to that area. And it just didn't feel right, obviously, to be holding a Grand Prix there when actually the focus should be on trying to help those people who have just had their lives turned upside down.
Yeah, it's a real shame. But it's also it's an iconic circuit. It's a race that we all want to get to and see go well. But it's got to be in the right circumstances, and obviously the situation is bigger than Formula One here. So the right decision, I'm sure everyone would agree, was made, and just hope that people there are okay.
The clean-up operation in full effect right now. Stefano Domenicali, of course, was born and raised in Imola and the region, made a statement just a few days ago, and Lawrence has pledged a huge amount of money for the relief effort. Yeah,
€1 million. I think that's a massive commitment to try and help the people there in the region where the Grand Prix was going to take place. Obviously, it's great to have an event in that region. So the only thing we can do, or the best thing we can do, is try and help them out. So it's great to see him make such a significant financial donation.
And Joe, that's not the only thing that's being handed over after the weekend. Obviously, everybody sort of arrived to set up for the Grand Prix, and the race now isn't taking place. But I know a lot of the infrastructure of what was going to be used will be actually passed over to those in the area.
Yeah, a lot of the catering supplies for the paddock club was all out there ready to go and, well, trying to set up for the race. Obviously, that's not going to be used. So that will go to locals who I'm sure will need it at this time. So everything that can be done out there that we could try, really.
Yeah, our thoughts very much with the people of the region. This is how the calendar looks now for the remainder of the season, which, for the moment at least, will see 22 Grand Prix contested. Of course, next up, the Monaco Grand Prix. That's why we're here today. And then Spain, Canada, Austria, Silverstone, Hungary and Belgium before the summer break. We return in the Netherlands, then Italy, Singapore, Japan, Qatar, United States at COTA, then Mexico, Brazil, Vegas, and finishing in Abu Dhabi at the end of November. Now, guys, Imola was going to see something a little bit new for the weekend, a trial format for qualifying with very different tyres being used. Lawrence, will this still be the case in Monaco?
No, so it's not going to be the case in Monaco. The idea of the trial was to give it a go, so run the hards in Q1, the mediums in Q2 and the softs in Q3. And the idea is to plan for the future, and they wanted to do it on a circuit where they could learn the most from it, and Monaco isn't really the best circuit to do that. So they're going to go away, they're going to have a think about it, and then they'll come back later in the year and do it. At the moment, I think they're looking at Budapest as a potential second option to try this out, but we will see that test. It just won't be this weekend.
And why were they doing that? Why are they reducing the number of tyres? Because it would come down to 11 sets over 13, right?
Yeah, so the idea is that you try and spice up the show, and I think Formula One for a number of years has been trying to trial new things, just to see if they can improve the show going forward. And this is the latest in one of those trials, to trial this at 2 races this year, to see if actually that increases or improves the spectacle during qualifying.
Decent for sustainability as well.
Tell you what, doing that for Monaco,
well,
that would spice up the show. But it's just not a place where you can run a hard tyre for a fast lap.
I tell you what might spice up the show, though, Jolyon. We were also going to have new wet tyre rules in Imola. No tyre warmers anymore for the intermediate or the wet. That will carry over to the Monaco Grand Prix, and it looks like it's going to rain.
Yeah, I mean, you're asking the right guy, because getting tyre temperature into wet or inters in any circuit is always your challenge. And then in Monaco, well, I found it impossible. Yeah. I crashed immediately at the start of the race because I didn't have tyre temperature.
I like the way you've got that out of the way, literally within the first couple of minutes of the show. Let's just get that done.
Elephant in the room is done. But no, seriously, it's a nightmare to drive Monaco in the wet. If it's raining this weekend and there's going to be no blankets for inters or wets, good luck to them. That's what I can say.
You're glad you're on the sofa, aren't you?
Yeah. I tell you, last year when it starts raining in Monaco, I'm pleased to be in the commentary box or the sofa or just watching on.
There will be a Pirelli tyre test straight after the Spanish Grand Prix. And for Silverstone, Pirelli have announced they will bring a new construction of tyre to that event. Given that the cars are going so much faster, the rate of development has proven to be so rapid that they just want to shore up those tyres for the future. Right, time to talk all things Monaco. It is one of the most unique, incredible races in the world.
Mesdames et messieurs, bonjour et bienvenue à Monaco.
The Monaco Grand Prix returns for this iconic race. The Principality is alive with the sound of engines.
It's great to have a weekend at home.
Les Alpes-Maritimes pour le Grand Prix de Clermont.
Jackie Stewart, the winner on the road to the championship.
The race goes on, 105 miles of high-speed driving.
Racing, absolute brilliance. Top job, Michael.
Wow, what a feeling.
Monaco, baby! Yeah! He goes for Stafford down the inside. They make contact. Oh no!
This is such an amazing atmosphere.
Monaco's a completely different experience. You hear the cars going around, it gets your blood pumping. It's very exciting.
Take too much curve straight into the wall.
They're going to get wheel to wheel elbow reverse here.
We won Monaco, so...
Winning Monte Carlo is always a dream.
Victory in Monaco goes to Sergio Perez. Visit us. Vamos!
Some incredible memories from the 79 years of the Monaco Grand Prix, a race which predates even the beginning of the Formula One World Championship. What will we see in the 80th running of the Monaco Grand Prix? Guys, this is a race which tests the mettle of every driver, and we arrive with a couple under pressure. I want to talk first about Nick de Vries, of course. He's been in the press quite a lot over recent weeks. Came into the sport with such hype after that amazing debut for Williams in Monza last year. A Formula E champion, a Formula 2 champion, and yet he has not had the easiest start to his season. I don't know which of you wants to pick this up. Jolyon's biting his top lip.
Well, no, I'd say that I'm just so very surprised that he started as badly as he has, and there's no other way to put it. He's been slow and he's been crashing, which is a bad mix. But I do still think he's got talent there.
Yeah.
I thought he would come in and lead the team with Yuki. I think we'd probably agree that Yuki looks like he's stepped up and has really taken it on with Gasly leaving the team. And I think maybe that's caught Nick out a little bit. His pedigree is pretty good, and he showed what he could do in Monza last year. It was unbelievable to come in and get in the points in that Williams. So I still think he can recover this. He just really needs a clean weekend. And I tell you, Monaco...
Wow.
is not the place to try and recover it with a clean weekend.
We know that car is difficult to drive. You can see that from the outside. Is it a case of a rookie trying to push too hard, too early? Is it a case of Yuki actually outperforming the car at the moment? Where do we sit with that?
I think there's just a number of mistakes that are kind of rookie mistakes that Nick's making. Baku, I thought, was going to be his breakthrough. He had a really good practice. It was a sprint weekend. He had a good practice. I think he was in the top 10 in the one practice that we had. The AlphaTauri car was quite good. And I thought this was going to be his chance. And then first lap of qualifying, puts it in the wall. Now, that's a rookie error. That's pushing too hard too soon on a street circuit that at the start of qualifying will only get better, will only rubber in. And from then on, you lose track time. The next thing you've got to do is a qualifying in that format, which was obviously terrible with no track time. And it's the sort of thing that then snowballs. You get to Miami, and straight away he's tapping the wall in FP1. And it's about having pace, but you kind of got to build up cleanly through a weekend. And there's just a few things that are going wrong. And the crash he had at the start of Miami as well. It's a bit of a rookie one where he's just right in the dirty air of Norris and just rear ends him. I don't know, is it a lack of concentration or just purely underestimated the dirty air of a Formula One car?
Lawrence, you, I know, are right in the mix of hearing everything that's happening behind the scenes in this sport. We've heard rumours potentially about replacements. Daniel Ricciardo's name has been mentioned. Liam Lawson's name has been mentioned. Even Iwasa from Formula 2. What are you hearing on any potential moves that might or might not occur this season?
I think his form has led to this kind of speculation, I think, and Helmut Marko's come out and he's talked about how Ricciardo isn't really in the frame to step in to replace Nick at the moment. The thing I feel is that Red Bull fought so hard to get him, didn't they? They fought off Williams, they fought off Alpine to convince Nick to come. So it's kind of within their interest to try and give him enough time to prove that actually they fought for the right guy. So I do think they're going to give him a bit more time. I also think their preference would be to let Liam Lawson go and win the Super Formula Championship, to let Iwasa go and win the F2 Championship, and then come into Formula 1 next year. I think bringing them in mid-season is not really what they want to be doing. So I think they are going to give Nick a little bit longer. And I think the other thing is he's had loads of street tracks to kind of start his rookie career. You're talking about Yuki's performance. Yuki has gone up like 2-3 levels.
Yeah.
You talk to the engineers and they are surprised at how much he's taken a jump this year. And that car is so difficult to drive. It's like it's been the worst car at some tracks this year. It's not easy for him to come in, as experienced as he is.
I think the tracks is a good point because he hasn't known a lot of the tracks as well. From Formula 2 or Formula E, you've got, Jeddah, really tricky to get onto terms with that. Melbourne, you don't do in junior Formula. Miami, he's not driven. So a lot of them early on, he doesn't know. Monaco, he will know, but it's Monaco, and it is really difficult if you're missing some confidence. But what I think is Red Bull have also been ruthless with their drivers in the past. Nick's 28. Is he the star of the future that you're kind of looking for with AlphaTauri? That's probably going to count against him, his age.
But then why fight so hard to get it?
Yeah.
I mean,
they thought they were getting the established Pierre Gasly replacement.
Finished article.
That's what they've not got yet. But they'll give him a bit more time, I'm sure, and see if he can just get into his stride. And it wouldn't surprise me if he could. But I know there's going to be head-scratching going on behind the scenes.
It's the Helmut Marko school of hard knocks, isn't it? Bring the kid in, bash his confidence out and say, there's a couple of guys here ready to replace you, step up or ship out.
He just needs one good weekend.
Yeah.
Like, he's had the sprint, so that kind of, you don't get the rhythm through the weekend. If he just had one good weekend, like Jolyon was kind of alluding to earlier, he'll just start building from there. But he hasn't really had that. He just keeps making little mistakes.
Other drivers, anybody else under pressure? Heard some comments out of James Vales in the week down at Williams about Logan Sargent, although for me they seemed more of actually supportive words, that he just needs to put a weekend together. I guess it depends how you read it. Either Logan needs to put a weekend together or he's doing really well, he just needs to put it all together. Which one of those is it?
I think it's the latter. I think they're putting their arm around him. I think they rate him, they want to stick by him, they want to give him the chance to do that. And I think what's happening at the moment, he's driving at like 100%. And I think James is just saying drive at 99%.
Yeah.
And then pull out those mistakes that are kind of stopping his rhythm through a weekend. And then actually he'll start building through the season. So I think, it's just a kind of he's got to do better, but it's not you've got to do better or you're out.
I've been impressed by his pace, actually, Logan. He's been behind Albon, but not by too much. And Alex is a good established driver that got himself into a Red Bull, destroyed Nicholas Latifi last year. Logan is clearly a big step forward. He's pushing Alex on in terms of one lap pace at least. It's just he's a young rookie that also I think Nick de Vries will get less time to justify himself than Logan will, because he's just come through F3 1 year, F2, and it's quite a quick promotion for him.
Two other drivers who, let's say, haven't had the best start to the year, and they're both desperately experienced, Jolyon. Kevin Magnussen and Valtteri Bottas. Neither of whom had a great start, and yet both showed up in Miami. What's going on there?
They needed it really badly. I think K-Mag was coming under a bit of pressure, actually, because Haas obviously signed Nico Hülkenberg. And K-Mag and Mick Schumacher last year were actually fairly even the second half of the season. Generally, Kev had the slightly stronger results and Mick had some more crashes, and that's how the sort of perception came about. Pace-wise, there wasn't much in it. Hülkenberg comes in the other car, and he's really quick, and he's really showing that. His qualifying performances have been standout so far in the rest of the field. I mean, you ask anyone in the paddock who's been the best qualifier outside of your obvious contenders, it's Nico Hülkenberg, getting that Haas into Q3. So that upped the pressure on K-Mag, but he put in an amazing weekend in Miami. So that was good. I don't know where Valtteri's been since Bahrain.
Yeah.
Alpha looked good in testing. They looked good in Bahrain. And then they've just been nowhere for a while. And I'd expect Valtteri to be, quite a lot stronger than Zhou, really. Zhou's been doing well, or has Valtteri been doing, underwhelmingly? he put in a much better weekend as well in Miami.
Pierre Gasly has been under pressure since the season started. Lawrence just 2 points away from a potential ban. Could possibly have had one after Australia. And yet now he is under slightly less pressure because 1 year has passed and he's lost a couple of those points.
Yeah, I don't think Pierre was too worried, if I'm honest, about that, picking up enough penalty points to get a race ban. But I do think that he would have hoped to have strung a few more performances together. Various circumstances have led to the team just making mistakes and reliability hasn't been great. So actually, from the car perspective, it hasn't been so strong. But the team seem pretty happy with Pierre and what he's doing. He seems, I think, personally, to think he's got the edge on Esteban. I think that will be important to him as well, because that battle's going to be ramping up through the year, because it's realistically only one of them are going to be sticking around at that team in the long term.
Well, talking about people sticking around at the team and battles within the team, Laurent Rossi, CEO, has come out swinging with some very, very punchy words. You interviewed him. I read it, great article. But no space to hide for anybody at the team, particularly in a team management position. Why has he come out and said these things? Why now? Why so ferociously? Who's at risk, and what has this got to do with the 25% sale of the team?
Well, he was angry, like properly angry with the situation, like how the team have performed this year. I think it was those silly little mistakes that the team were making consistently that really wound him up, I think, and why he felt the need to come out and publicly list all of the issues. Normally, this kind of thing happens behind closed doors. You don't often see team senior personnel come out and slate their team. But Laurent wanted to send a message, I think, out to senior management within the team across the engine division and the chassis division. I think you mentioned the rumours of the potential sale of the racing element of Alpine. It could be that they want to tell those potential investors, we're sorting out our house, still come and invest. It could be. But I actually think the bigger issue at the minute is senior management. And I think he is trying to tell the team that none of you are going to be safe if we continue operating in this way.
Preemptive strike?
Maybe. I just think their side of the season was embarrassing at times when you consider that they gave a huge amount of hype about they want to be fourth still, but they want to be closer to the big teams. In actual fact, they're kind of not done that badly in doing it. The pace-wise, they're closer to the big teams. They would be fourth if Aston Martin hadn't have produced a really good car this year in terms of pace. But think back to Melbourne and the two drivers crash into each other right at the end, as you want to call that last restart. They still crash with each other. Baku, they're having a terrible weekend. Reliability's not good. The drivers didn't perform particularly well when they were on circuit. The car wasn't great with all the upgrades. And through those two weekends, race 3 and 4 of the season, they've got no points and they've just ended up just looking a little bit silly at times. So I think it's kind of reactionary to that. Then they put it together in Miami and they're not bad. They are knocking on the door of a Mercedes on a bad qualifying or a Ferrari on a bad qualifying, and certainly an Aston Martin.
So Alpine then, as you said, brought some upgrades. Didn't quite work out in Baku, but started to work for them in Miami at the last Grand Prix. Time for us to take a look at some of the other teams, the upgrades they've been bringing, the form which has ebbed and flowed over recent races. And for that, we can swing across the studio and welcome in Sam Collins, who's been loitering with intent. Tell him, mate.
Well, I like loitering in this corner. Actually, normally at this time of Grand Prix weekend, I'm talking great excitement about all the new parts fitted to all of the cars. But I don't get to do that because of the sad cancellation of the Imola race. But I thought we would take a look back at how some of those upgrades have fared up and down the field. Now, taking a few bits of data, digging into it across the last 3 races, we can see a few trends emerging about how these teams are closing up on the fastest team of all, Red Bull Racing. You'll see them down at the 0 point there. But you'll see some of the other teams are beginning to get a little bit closer. Aston Martin, 1/10 of a second closer. Mercedes edging closer. Ferrari, not all that far behind anyway. They're getting a bit closer too. McLaren, it's not worked quite so well for McLaren over the last 3 races. But one of the factors you're going to see here is that the circuit types also have a bit of an effect. Take a look at Williams down here. They've got a 0.3 of a second gain relative to Red Bull. But I think that's actually more down to the fact that we've had some quite fast circuits, which really sort of benefits the low-drag Williams concept. But the car I think we're really going to be looking at with great interest is actually the Mercedes. Now, we are expecting to see Mercedes' first really big upgrade package of the season arriving at Imola. It could be quite drastic if all the rumours are true, and I think they are. We have heard that Mercedes are still planning to bring that big upgrade package to Monaco, which is something of a surprise because bringing large upgrade packages to a circuit like Monaco, where you really want the drivers to be confident in the performance of the car and the way it works, is something that is one of the reasons you tend not to bring those parts there. It's also particularly easy for a driver to smash all of those shiny new bits up into that Armco wall. So one of the things that drivers will have to be told about this is be a bit careful. And Jolyon, what sort of communication is the team giving to you when you go into Monaco about protecting the car?
Don't crash, but it's so easy to do. I've been in a situation actually with Lotus before it became Renault where parts were so few and far between. And it was very much, if you crash, we might not be racing, but we certainly won't be racing the new part or whatever part we had. And that's the thing for Monaco. It's not the place to bring upgrades. The track is so different to anything else. You'll run the car, they'll all be running the car in a completely different configuration because it's high downforce anyway. So far, we've only had really low or medium downforce circuits. So you're running it in completely different configuration. Then you're adding new components in, and there's the highest chance to crash of anywhere on the calendar, and then you might just destroy them before you even get the chance to race them. It's a tricky one. Still, downforce is king. So if you can add downforce to the car, it should help you. But there's risk element, and you're not going to learn as much around Monaco as you would on a conventional circuit.
Sam, they've got to be totally confident in this upgrade to be bringing it to Monaco after everything that Jolyon's just said, right?
I think it's an emergency. I think Mercedes have actually got to bring this package because they're losing out on so much time. But there is a bit of a question mark because of those factors that Jolyon was just talking about some of the other teams with their upgrades. Alfa Romeo, desperately in need of an upgrade package. I think Ferrari need to bring a thing or two. And also we've heard Alpine. Well, Alpine have had a bit of a disaster recently, but they've smashed their cars to pieces. Also, AlphaTauri, their home races, Imola, they were hoping to bring a major package to that car to help them at low speed. And I'm not sure where we're sitting with those cars. But I know, Lawrence, you've been on the pace of all of these teams over the weekend so far. What are you hearing about the plans for upgrades for these teams?
There have been real difficulties in deciding what to do because it's kind of balancing that risk and reward. Do you want to risk leaving the performance on the table and then protecting those parts till the next race, or do you want to bring them to that race and risk damaging them? For Alfa Romeo, they're still deciding what to do. They were going to bring a fair few new parts to Imola. They are thinking now, we'll leave it till Friday in Monaco, decide whether or not we want to leave it on the car and take it through. Same for AlphaTauri with their floor. They can't really decide whether they want to risk it or not because you don't have spares of these things. So it's whether or not you want to risk it on that part. And Ferrari have decided, generally speaking, when I asked them, that they're going to leave the few small updates they were going to bring to Imola till Spain, where they actually have got a more sizable package there. And it makes sense to them, they say, to leave it till that race.
That's the thing. You've got Barcelona is 1 week after, which is the traditional test track where you can really evaluate new upgrades. You don't want to be destroying them in Monaco and running out and not being able to bring what you want to Barcelona where you can really get a read on it. So they're going to have to trust the drivers at Mercedes if they're going to bring it. They've got a decent pairing to do that, but it's I think it looks to me like a bit of a desperate measure. Well, the engineer in me doesn't ever want to trust the driver, so we'll see what the teams do. But the Monaco circuit, now as the first European Grand Prix, that's traditionally the first place for all of the upgrades. But Monaco as the first European race, well, that's a little bit different, isn't it? And Monaco, anyway, is a little bit of a different place.
It certainly is, mate. And just what you guys were talking about with bringing some of those upgrades and running them on Friday, as we understand it, it will rain on Friday in Monaco, so even more jeopardy. It'll make it an easy choice then.
Yeah,
don't run the upgrades. Don't run it. Cold, wet tyres, new upgrades, slippery track, Monaco. Even in the dry, though, this place is such a unique challenge. From the cockpit, as a driver, the first time you get out there in a Formula One car, is it terrifying or does it come naturally? Because it's such a... It feels like it would be such a tunnel, so scary to just be within the midst of that. It's completely balmy.
It's completely balmy that we have a race there. But that's what makes it so cool, and that's what makes it Monaco. It's narrow like nothing else on the calendar. It's so steep, some of the parts as well. You come out of the pit lane, you come around Saint-Devote on the inside, and you're just looking at the sky as you're pointing up and up towards Massenet, weaving between the narrowest walls, some bumps still on the circuit, even if they've smoothed it out quite a lot. It feels properly bonkers, feels so quick. You barely get a chance to think about anything else apart from next corner, next corner, next corner. Try and keep your heart rate down. It's such an adrenaline rush.
Well, let's hear from the drivers of the 2023 Formula One World Championship about just what makes this place so special.
Monaco is extremely special.
The more risk you are going to take in Monaco, the quicker you are going to go.
You're playing with such fine margins.
Monaco is extremely special. It is, first of all, a city track. It is very historic for Formula One.
Monaco historically has been the only street circuit in the calendar, so it was no room to mistake. It was just between two walls the whole lap.
It's really that on-the-edge, air in your throat driving, which we all crave. It's what gives us the adrenaline and what we love to do.
It's just difficult to explain the feeling of speed.
It is so intense for us in Formula One. You have no rooms for mistakes. Everything is going extremely quick. You don't have time to think in between corners because it's just one corner after the other.
Basically, you are trying to push, but you need to finish the lap, which is always a tricky thing, especially around qualifying.
I think Monaco is the toughest qualifying of the year because you have only that lap on Saturday that more or less will dictate the race on Sunday.
On a Saturday during qualifying, you are truly in the element of floating between crashing and performance.
You are a centimeter or even less. Sometimes we're kissing the walls. You got to be super precise.
It's something that can bite you quite quickly.
It is challenging, stressful, but it's also beautiful. To win in Monaco means something very special.
All the best drivers have won in Monaco, and that's why we all want to win it. And the fact that it's also so glamorous, I guess, that brings an extra value to the venue.
There's just something about this weekend that is very, very special.
Special is right. There is nowhere quite like Monaco and the Monaco Grand Prix. So many memories over 80 years of racing at Monaco. For me, well, it's not a memory because I was a few months old when the race took place, but having watched it back so many times, Villeneuve, 81, what a drive. And then, of course, a couple of years later, we all remember that famous race in 84 in the wet, Senna blasting through in the Tolman and so nearly the win without that red flag being waved just a little bit early for the sake of Mr. Prost. And one of my sort of defining moments of my teenage years and my love of Formula One, that 96 Grand Prix. Panis, in the wet, in the Ligier, bonkers race. Absolutely mad.
Car park at hairpin. It was
car park at the hairpin. And David Coulthard running Michael Schumacher's helmet. So it looked like Michael Schumacher was in the McLaren. Just a bizarre day, a great race. Jolyon, some of your memories?
Yeah, I love the Panis one. That's an iconic race, isn't it? I think we've had some modern classics, though. Last year's Grand Prix at Monaco was pretty good.
Yeah.
4 cars fighting for a win in the rain. 2019, vintage. Hamilton defensive from Max Verstappen, who had nothing to lose and sent a lunge on the penultimate lap, and they had a little bit of contact for the win. It was pretty great. And 2008, I think, Hamilton's win, where he crashed early on, and just so many drivers hit trouble that day, and then Lewis ended up coming back through for a monumental win.
Funny you should mention that. If you want to see that, it's coming up straight after this show, a replay of the 08 race. Lawrence, for you?
I'm going to take it back a little bit to 92 and that famous Nigel Mansell-Ayrton Senna battle. Mansell, that Williams was super quick. He had to pit, unfortunately, and then came out behind Senna, and he just could not find a way past. And I know there was no overtake, but just watching that battle around Monaco was incredible. I think that's sometimes some of the best races. There are no passes, but the battle and the defence was incredible. And I'm going to pick 97 as well. Bit random, because Jolly and I were talking about this before the show, and he was like, "Nice, interesting." So I've got 97 because it was Schumacher won that year. Rubens Barrichello and the Stewart came second. It was heavy rain. I remember reading Autosport the week after this race, and they did a cartoon, and they had 2 Ferrari engineers holding umbrellas over Williams because Williams chose to start this race when it was raining on slicks. And Mick Hakkinen was on the slicks as well, and Ferrari went with the wet tyres, which was obviously the right idea because it was raining, and it rained significantly throughout the Grand Prix. And he obviously came through and won by 50-odd seconds. Great to see a Stewart on the Grand Prix, on the podium as well. Epic race.
Amazing. Is that the race that Williams had sent a member of the team down the coast to report back if it was raining, and he reported back and phoned in and said, it's not raining, it's not raining. So they started on slicks thinking, it's going to dry out, we're going to look like gods. Walks back to the paddock after the race, bone dry. Patrick Head goes completely mad. Turns out they sent him 20 minutes in the wrong direction. You can go from hero to zero, though. At this track, we talk about Senna, the greatest possibly to ever race at Monaco, but even he lost concentration, or maybe was in a place where he was so concentrated that he lost that focus. He's talked, or he back in the day, talked about having an almost out-of-body experience. He was so in the zone at the race, and then put it into the barriers down at Portier, walked back to his apartment and wasn't seen for a couple of days afterwards. Just inconsolable how quickly you can throw it all away here.
The thing is with the track, it's almost like hypnotic, the way that it's 78 laps. It's a really short circuit. It's only just over 3 kilometres, so it's the shortest lap on the calendar with still 19 corners. And they just come up one after another. And if you're Senna and you're out front, or you're minding your own business, you just find this rhythm where it's just corner, corner, corner. You get no chance to think about anything else. So you do kind of have this out-of-body focus, really, where everything's just happening in a big blur, and you make one mistake, one lapse of concentration, and you find the wall, and it can happen to the best. There's, so many legends have crashed in Monaco.
Speaking of which, what's your heartbreak moment?
It was one of those legends, I think. It's got to be a personal one.
Yeah.
It's got to be Zebra Crossing Gate.
Yes.
In 2016.
I bet you can't look at the cover of Abbey Road without...
I still have nightmares. I still have nightmares. You know what? It was one of my honkiest weekends in a Formula One car, that Monaco one. And I love Monaco, and I won there in GB2, and I came into F1, I was like, I'm going to give it the beans here and really show what I can do. And I bit off more than I could chew. So, yeah, it was also probably my scariest crash, because I headed down towards the barrier, having already hit it on the left, just feel the wind on my feet. I thought, well, this is not going to feel good. And thankfully, the crash truck did its job. But, yeah, not a great one for me, that.
Lawrence?
It's got to be a Charles Leclerc moment. There's quite a few to choose.
Well, aren't there? Yeah.
He's not had the best of luck, but I think it was the first time in 80-odd years that you had a Monegasque on pole in Monaco in 2021. And he was feeling great. Even though he had that crash in qualifying, that kind of the guys rebuilt the car in time for the race. He was set to start from pole. Then he left the garage to take his spot on the grid.
Yeah.
And that's when he realised it was all over, effectively. And the tears, the emotion that was coming through there, you felt his pain.
I still can't believe they didn't change the gearbox. It just seems so... Because you watch this hit. When he goes in, front end goes in, rear snaps round. I still can't believe they didn't change it.
No, but you go for broke. Gearbox penalty, 5 places if you did that.
Yeah.
What's the point in starting?
It's Monaco. Roll the dice, right?
Yeah, you roll the dice, and they gave it the once over and checked. It was a bit of a... It was one of those Leclerc heartbreaking radios, and especially for this guy who's not had a lot of luck in his home race. That was a tough one, I agree.
Sam, what's your favourite thing about Monaco?
I think it's going to be a little bit predictable, Will. It's the nature of the circuit itself. At the start of every single Formula One season, the teams will have to bring a dedicated Monaco package, simply because of the nature of the circuit. It is so tight, so twisty, and it's got such a low average speed. Normally, when we look at one of these speed traces around the lap, you'll start to see different sections of the track, slow, medium and high. Well, look for the high-speed section on the circuit here at Monaco. There's absolutely nothing. The only really high-speed section here is through the tunnel, and that is essentially a straight unless something goes very badly wrong. But look at all the slow-speed sections. Down here, Sandoval, the first corner, extremely tight. Jolyon Palmer told us all about that earlier on. Then you've got the slowest section in the entire F1 calendar, down here at what used to be called the station hairpin, now the Grand Hotel or the Lowe's hairpin. Then you've got the entrance through the little chicane here, and then things build up into the swimming pool complex, and that section there really rewards driver confidence because the drivers have to get so close to the barrier at extremely high speed. But the nature of the track, that narrow circuit, that low average speed, well, here you go, at the hotel hairpin, the teams have to design the steering racks around that section of circuit just so they can get the car around the corner. These big current generation cars, some of the teams are actually having to put dedicated Monaco specification steering racks on the car to do it. And then because of that low average speed, the teams can go crazy on the downforce levels. So you can run massive wings on the car. We saw Aston Martin trying a really unusual wing design last season at the high downforce levels. But you're going to see a few teams running some really wacky solutions, I suspect, particularly if it does rain. So there are going to be upgrades, but they're Monaco-specific upgrades, not general season upgrades. And the teams have got to get those right. Any team that gets it wrong will be struggling all the way through. And some teams, when you start looking at some of the data, are already struggling around laps like that and in these conditions. So this is looking back into free practice 2 in Miami, and you can see some different types of corner here. Again, slow, medium, high-speed corners and along the straights. Well, the nature of Monaco, there aren't any straights, so Red Bull's big straight-line speed advantage, Williams' big straight-line speed advantage, that doesn't count here. No, none of them are going to anywhere near 300 kph, maybe just coming out of the tunnel, but that's it. But look at this, Ferrari quicker than Red Bull in the slow-speed corners. That's going to be absolutely crucial around the Monaco lap. Then look at a few of the other cars in the slow and medium speed corners. Aston Martin, they look pretty good, and we've heard a lot of talk from Fernando Alonso in particular about targeting Monaco for a really special result. Then take a look at the pink column. Alpine, despite those comments from Laurent Rossi, look, Alpine look pretty good around the Monaco circuit as well. But actually, Alpine, they consider this one of their home races. This is a really important Grand Prix for the entire Alpine team, so the pressure is going to be mounting on them. Mercedes, that upgrade package is going to be really crucial to see if that's working. Not really the right circuit for it, because we can see Mercedes, it likes high-speed corners, not so much the slow and medium corners as well. But actually, some cars, they're really going to be struggling. Look here, AlphaTauri, it hates those low-speed corners. They're really going to struggle unless they get upgrades onto the car. But if it rains, that's going to change everything. Well, I think we are going to see a bit of a mixed-up field here. I wonder who's going to be on top.
I wonder who's going to be on top. And, guys, I wonder if anyone has a chance of actually toppling Red Bull Racing. From the graphs, as we've seen, Ferrari looking impressive in those slow-speed corners.
Quite fancy Leclerc for it this weekend.
Really?
Which, it feels bold.
Bold, yeah.
That is bold.
Because Red Bull have just waltzed everything so far this year. But think of Baku qualifying.
Yep.
Leclerc was the man to beat over 2 qualifying sessions. He proved it. Street circuit, he made up the time in the slow speed. OK, they were nowhere in the race. It doesn't matter in Monaco. If you take the pole, and Leclerc has taken poles before, if you do that, then it doesn't matter if your race pace is bad. You've got to get the strategy right. You've got to get the pit stops right. There'll be some question marks on Ferrari there. I just think Leclerc can do it.
He's having to drive that car on the ragged edge, though, to get the most out of it. And we've seen that in countless races. We saw it last time out in Miami. We've seen him have a number of incidents around this track, just trying to take too much of a bite out of the circuit. Do you fear that with this advantage, potential advantage, he'll try and take too much out of it, or has he learned?
Well, no, I don't think he would have learned. You know, this is how he drives. It's on the edge, and it's either rapid or it's in the wall. Yeah. And it's rapid more often than it's in the wall. I think he's the best qualifier. That's why he's had a couple of Monaco poles recently. The last 2 Monaco poles, in fact. I feel like he can do it as long as he builds into the weekend and doesn't have a needless one on a Friday, which we've seen him have in Miami, already put him on the back foot there. And I think he can do it. Just a couple of crashes recently maybe have jogged the confidence.
But we're talking about Red Bull Racing here. They have been unbeatable, unstoppable all season. This is a circuit they love. It's a circuit they traditionally go well on. You genuinely think they're beatable? Because I've got major question marks as to whether they would be.
I just think they are on this occasion because of the nature of the set. So you've got low-speed corners, Ferrari good. Qualifying important, Leclerc good. Race pace not important, Ferrari bad. You know, all of the factors are merging together to make this one if any race in the first half of the season is going to be won by something that's not a Red Bull, they're either going to be wiping each other out, the two Red Bulls, or it's Leclerc on fire in Monaco, which we've seen recently.
It's definitely their best chance, I think, of the whole season to get their kind of noses in front. I'm just not sure, because when you have to be on the limit, right, so much in Monaco, and Carlos and both Charles were saying in Miami, when they take that car to the limit, the thing just goes unpredictable. And I just feel like he's going to have to rein it back enough that he's not going to be able to nail it in quality.
All right, let's not all pile on Jolyon. who's your money on?
Well, I'll get ready for you to pile on me then when I say.
OK.
I think Fernando.
I'm normally the one who every weekend says Fernando's going to win it just because
you think Fernando's going to win it?
Yeah, I think Fernando's going to win it. Well, I think he's going to get pole, and by default, I think he hold on to it.
OK.
Fernando's going to take pole?
Yeah, very much so.
Expand.
Look, I just think that we were just looking at that graph just then. Aston, OK, not as good as Ferrari, but actually quite some way, but they are up there and they're in the mix. And I feel like Fernando can get into that superhuman level. And you were talking about how earlier drivers can get into that rhythm and then you're just almost on autopilot because you're just doing it. Fernando's got the capacity to do that. He'll have picked this race out right at the beginning when he realised his car was good as the one that he can just get his nose in front and then make his elbows as wide as possible. I genuinely think Aston would have put a lot of thought into this weekend as well, with their Monaco specs set up as well.
And he did get his elbows out last year in Monaco, holding that entire train up for as long as he could. I kind of see where you're coming from with this to an extent, because one of the areas that Aston's been so strong this year is in traction events. So coming out of those slow corners, that Aston's had, from Bahrain onwards, incredible grip, incredible drive out. And, you know, we're just seeing on the screen here, Fernando, you know, doing what he does around Monaco, getting his elbows out. What, do you think they've got a chance, Jolyon?
I don't see it for Aston this weekend, just because I think their biggest strength is race pace and having the ability on their tyres to go longer. OK, with the traction events, but trying to fire it up for one lap, he's just about eked out over a Mercedes or over a Ferrari if they're having a bad day. And I just don't think they've got enough to take the fight to Red Bull on one lap. I just don't see it. Race pace is their strength, and I don't think they'll be able to use it that well in Monaco.
But Fernando's been on the front row multiple times this year.
Leclerc's been on pole.
Yeah, hang on. So what we're arguing between Charles and Fernando now? That's what we're doing.
Well, no. And what about Checo? You know, we're thinking Red Bull as well. We could have a Checo Max situation still.
Well, when we talk about Checo, we have to go back 1 year and we have to look at what happened in qualifying last year, because, of course, the rumblings from that carried on all the way to the end of the season and now into the early part of this season. There's the aftermath of it. We don't have the telemetry trace, but, Jolyon, you've watched this back about 100,000 times, and from listening to it and from what we understand of the telemetry trace, was it intentional?
I think it was, honestly. No one really picked it up at the time.
No,
because you're
nobody
thinking,
did.
Why would he? He was in third.
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense.
And yeah, why would he do that? But I think he stamps on the throttle with a lot of steering lock, and certainly the Verstappen camp within Red Bull were pretty sure it was deliberate. And when I looked into it, I also think it's deliberate. The thing is, you get this quite a bit in Monaco. We've had the famous examples of Schumacher back in the day, the Rosberg one, where he got away with it.
That's sneaky.
It looked pretty dodgy. So it's the sort of track where you can have a crash, and it could, you know, they look innocent crashes in Monaco because it's so easy to do. And Leclerc had one a couple of years ago as well. Was that deliberate? Didn't look like it, and he did it again in Baku from provisional pole. But I do think it's the sort of one where you cannot rely on that last lap to do it. You've got to be provisional pole, Q3, run one, because that sort of thing can happen again.
Right, money where your mouths are, I guess, time. Fantasy F1. Have you made your team yet for the weekend, or are you going to wait and see what things are looking like after practice?
Well, I'm very happy to talk about this subject because for the first time this season, I'm ahead of both of you in our league. I don't really know how.
I'm fuming. I'm absolutely fuming with it.
Because Jolyon takes it so seriously, it means more to me that I've managed to go ahead of you. I haven't set my team yet, but I don't think I'm going to make a lot of changes like I have. Well, yeah, I've kept it with Red Bull and Aston. I'm just stuck with those two.
So the thing is, do you put in a Leclerc? And this could be the time. It feels like such a risk, though, because then we're going to go back to the Red Bull tracks and you got to muck around with your team for a one-off special. I can see Leclerc having a very strong weekend, although so much has gone wrong in the luck stakes.
Who are you going to substitute out to bring Leclerc in? Because he's not cheap.
Well, this is the thing.
Because you're going to have to make two changes. You're going to have to make your two changes.
Yeah. So then I'm probably
You're gonna
not.
have to drop Max.
But you'll have to see how it goes. I'm not dropping Max. There's no way in 2023 I'm taking Verstappen out of my team, and he's probably getting my boost as well.
Right, one team we have spoken about a little bit over there with Sam, but it's Mercedes. If they bring this upgrade package, which they believe to be worthwhile, can they get back in the mix? I mean, obviously, we don't know what kind of a leap they're expecting from it, but let's start at the start. If they bring it and they run it, does that show desperation or does that show confidence in the package?
Probably could be both, really. I don't think they're mutually exclusive. I think they have confidence in the package. They've said for a long time that they're bringing upgrades. So I think they know. They've had time to work on it. They will know the numbers. Mm-hmm. Again, it's a tricky one to really see it play out around a circuit that there's so many different variables in. The track's changing lap on lap. That it's all low speed, apart from the 2 bits of hairy high speed or medium speed. But I do think it shows that they've got confidence that it's going to work. But also it shows that they think they need to put it on in Monaco rather than save it for Barcelona. So I think it's a bit of both for Mercedes. Will it be enough? It's a big question. No one knows until they put it on and we see if they've turned the world upside down.
Well, who will it be? Mercedes, Red Bull, Ferrari, Aston, maybe Alpine? Let us know your thoughts and any questions you have coming into the Monaco Grand Prix weekend using hashtag F1Live, and we will do our best to answer it over the course of the weekend, from weekend warm-up on Thursday all the way through to the Grand Prix on Sunday. And here is where you can catch everything over the weekend. Practice, of course, begins on Friday with practice 1 at 1:15 local time and practice 2 at 4:45. Practice 3 takes place on Saturday morning, 12:15. Then the pre-quali show coming along at 3:30, qualifying itself at 4, and your post-quali show immediately after the session. Then the big day, race day in Monaco. Your pre-race show at 2 o'clock local time, the race at 3, and your post-race show coming along immediately after the podium. Well, folks, that is just about all we've got time for. My thanks to you all for tuning in. My thanks to Jolyon, Lawrence and Sam, of course, for their insight. We would all have so loved to have been in Imola this weekend, and our thoughts remain very much with everyone in the Emilia-Romagna region. For now, though, that is it. We will see you next weekend in Monaco for the grandest Grand Prix of them all.
The Monaco Grand Prix returns, and the Principality is alive with the sound of engines.
The home boy, Charles Leclerc, leads them down the straight.
Gasly getting alongside Ricciardo, he's done it! Perez and Sainz, that's the 1-2 battle.
Oh, what a save! It's Perez in the Principality!
Checo, you have won Monaco!
Bravo!